everyone. Welcome once again to my channel. First of all, I would like to thank everyone who joined me and commented on my first video. It was very beautiful to read everyone's comment. It was very encouraging, so thank you. As you can see, today I'm joined by Rico, who's enjoying the story. As you can notice, I've inserted a disclaimer for people who are very sensitive to offensive content. Today, I'm gonna share another very interesting story. It will be a story of a serial killer that has not been witnessed in history since 1894. On the 18th April 1894, a serial killer was born. Before we get into the crime, I want to give some context about her life. And even before I speak about her life, I want to speak about her mother's life. Her mother was born in a very rich family, so she had everything she wished to have. And she was the spoiled child. One day, as she was heading back home from an event at the ballroom, she decided to walk home on her own. Usually, she's surrounded by bodyguards, but that day she decided to just go on her own. Walking, as it was a summer day and the weather was lovely in the evening. As she was walking near the bushes, someone grabbed her from the hair and raped her. She felt traumatized, she headed home, and as soon as she got home, she just slept. Next morning, she did not even understand what happened to her. Just to give some context, back in the days, women were not very familiar with intimacy. So she was just living her life and she felt ashamed sharing what happened to her with her family. As the months passed by, she got pregnant, and that was a shock to her parents. So they found a solution to solve the whole situation, and that is by marrying her rapist. Her rapist comes from a very poor family, and of course, she had to go live with him. She lost everything. She was in complete misery, living with people in a very small room, even sharing a bathroom. From living the prestigious life to someone who is dealing with extreme poverty. That created a huge shock to her. She had a difficult pregnancy and a miserable life. After 9 months, Leonardo was born, so the mother felt that her entire life was cursed due to this baby that she had. So she never loved this baby. Leonardo had a horrible childhood. Her mother had even other children, but she never loved Leonardo as the other children. She even told her children not to give food to their sister. Leonardo felt excluded. As the years passed by, Leonardo started to feel depressed. She used to lock herself inside the room. Sometimes she doesn't even have food to eat, so neighbors would just give her food because they feel bad for her. One day, she decided to commit suicide, and that was not successful. Then, after just less than a year, she tried another time. And this time, guys, her mom saw her trying to strangle herself using a rope, and she told her, make sure next time the rope is tighter so you could commit suicide successfully. How horrible. Leonarda craved love, affection, and attention because she had never lived that in her house. So she met this guy, luckily, who was genuinely in love with her, and she decided to marry her. Now, her mother went really angry because she thought that she could find a better husband for her. And she wanted to actually find a rich husband for her daughter so that way she can change the situation, as she also didn't have a lot of money with her husband. And back in the days, it used to be different. If the daughter is married to someone who's rich, then the entire family's daughter is also rich. So that didn't happen, unfortunately, for the mother. And Leonarda decided to leave the house to enjoy her new life with her husband. On the day of her wedding, their mother comes to visit them, and she cursed her daughter in front of all the guests, and she told her, "I wish you will never have a peaceful life." Leonarda back in the day was superstitious, and she believed in, black magic and superstitions, and if someone curses you, then that curse will be with you forever. So her mother's curse was stuck in her mind, even though she was not living with her mom. And year after year, as she was trying to get pregnant to have babies, after 3 years, she failed to have a baby. And during the 3 years, her mood started to get really worse than before. So she got into again a deep depression where she used to have um, breakdowns. Her husband didn't even understand what happens to her, and he was trying to support her as much as he can. Now, also financially, they were not very stable because the husband worked as a clerk who earned just enough money to for their living. And now, after 3 years, Leonarda was successfully pregnant. Unfortunately, Leonarda had 17 children, of which 10 died, 3 miscarriages, and only 4 of the children lived. Now, as she was going through this path of losing her children, her mood started to become really horrible. And that's when she started to become ill, mentally ill. And back in the days, they did not really understand mental health and no one gave it like big importance. So she was just drowning in her depression, anxieties, even she started to have seizures and she would pass out. So she was overprotective on the 4 children that lived. Financially, the situation was getting worse because now she has 4 children and her husband's expenses have raised. She decided to go and start working. Her husband was able to get her a job as a cleaner in night shifts. So, because she was so afraid to leave her children alone at home, he found her this position so that she can go and do her job late in the evening while he looks after the kids after coming back from work. She was convinced with this idea and she started to work. One day, while she was at work, her husband comes to her office to inform her that one of the children has passed away. That was really traumatizing and another shock to Leonarda that she could not resist. She then went into a much more severe depression. She started to feel suicidal and she just felt that her life is completely cursed. She went to a fortune teller and she asked her to actually check what is she going to be witnessing in the future, to the point that she thought that her 3 remaining kids are also going to pass away one day. The fortune teller tells her, "I don't see that your 3 children will die. However, I see you in 2 locations. One is the prison, the other one is a mental hospital." Of course, back in the day, when you tell them mental hospital, people would freak out because whoever went to the hospital would never make his way out. Leonarda was overprotective and very attached to her 3 children. In fact, she really, really loved her first child. And as he got at the age of 18, he had to join the army. And she started to go to this fortune teller a lot and started to get even more superstitious. The fortune teller told her that you've got to protect your children, and that is through removing the curse that your mom had given you. So, just to mention that Leonarda left the job that she used to have and they managed to save some money, her and her husband, and she opened a small shop where she did some sort of business. And so they started to generate some more money, and Leonarda's eldest son, who was her favorite, as he decided to join the Italian army, Leonarda felt more determined than ever about protecting her son. And that's where she got Just randomly, the idea of starting sacrificing women in order to protect her son while he's away, and that's where the crimes have started. Leonarda killed 3 women. Her victims were carefully picked. Her first victim was Faustina Setti. This woman came to her shop, and Leonardo has promised her that she will find her a suitable husband. So she brought her to the shop. She drugged her by putting some drops of drug into her glass of wine. As the woman passed out, she killed her, cut her into pieces, and put her in a large pot. So Leonardo used to write all her crimes in a memoir, and she said, quote, I threw the pieces into a pot. I added 7 kilos of caustic soda, which I had bought to make soap, and stirred the whole mixture until the pieces dissolved in a thick, dark mush that I poured into several buckets and emptied in a nearby septic tank. As for the blood in the basin, I waited until it had coagulated, dried it in the oven, grounded it, and mixed it with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, and eggs, as well as a bit of margarine, kneading all the ingredients together. I made lots of crunchy tea cakes and served them to the ladies who came to visit, though I also ate them. I don't even know how to comment. Her second victim was Francesca Solvi, and this woman also received the same treatment. She had promised her a job in a school, and she had dragged her to the shop in the same way, where she drugged her, killed her, and cut her into pieces. Her third victim was Virginia Cacioppo. She was also dragged into the same way to the shop where she drugged her and she killed her, cut her into pieces. Also, they found in the memoir of Leonarda a note about this third victim. Leonarda said, quote, she ended up in the pot like the 2 other women. Her flesh was fat and white. When it had melted, I added a bottle of cologne, and after a long time in the boil, I was able to make some most acceptable creamy soap. I gave bars to the neighbors and acquaintances. The cakes were better. That woman was really sweet. So using her 3 victims, Leonardo actually made cake and soap. The soap she distributed to the neighbors, basically to build some good relationships, and the cakes she consumed them at the shop. She also fed her visitors that cake, and she also sold it in a sort of a business. I really I don't know how to react to that, but it's just so cruel. Now, let me take you through how they managed to catch Leonarda and actually learn about her crimes. On the day when the last victim was heading to her shop, luckily her sister in law saw her entering the shop, and since then the woman disappeared. The sister in law went and reported that to the police, and they came, started to investigate with Leonarda. And surprisingly, she easily confesses to all her crimes without even feeling guilty about what she had committed. And she told them that actually I was doing all of this because I had to clear this curse that my mom had given me on the day of my wedding, and also to be able to protect my son who's gone to the army and make sure he comes back safe to me. Leonardo was then arrested for 30 years in prison, in addition to 3 years at the mental hospital. Leonardo died in 1970 suddenly. She had some sort of disease. The tools that Leonardo has used to kill her victims are exposed in one of the museums in Europe. It's called the Criminology Museum. but people actually go to see the tools that she had used to kill these people or these three women. This woman was like so keen in killing her victims in a very creative way. She even consumed her victims. She used the whatever she made out of these victims, the soaps and the cakes, to build good acquaintances around the neighborhood where she lived and to actually make money out of that. So she did that as a business in addition to clearing that kind of curse that she had lived with. I've told you guys the story of Leonarda, her mom as well, to give you like an overall synopsis of the family where she lived, what she has gone through. Do you think that Leonarda was a victim or actually she is guilty? And do you think she was mentally ill or she was just living in bad circumstances? Do you see her as the bad guy or the bad woman, or actually that was just a result of what she had gone through since she was born? Um, Such stories are like hugely aggressive, and they just make you think, how could you protect yourself from people that you might confront and you might think they're just normal people? Of course, we have to be very careful and know the people that we're surrounded by and make sure that we are aware and taking our precautions until we get to know the person, not to trust just from the first meeting, and always make sure we are paying attention to all the red flags in any relationship, whether the person is dealing or behaving in a certain manner, what is actually the person is going through. So it's just like we have to be careful because we don't know people that are out there. Also, luckily, we are in times where mental health is taken care of, unlike the old days. Please tell me, what did you think of this story? What is the conclusion that you have drawn, and how do you feel after hearing this disturbing story, I would call it? I hope you guys stay safe and make good choices and take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.